Hi everyone, this is Ashley Lateki Ellenboss with Sky House Herb School and Apothecary, and today we'll be exploring the medicine and the magic of one of my favorite flowers, which is violet. So I've drawn the card from my Flower Speaks deck, which is one of my favorite decks, and you can see here in this image there's a lot of water. Can you see the fish there? Kind of in the roots. And you can see here how this woman is sort of kind of modestly tucked away among the violets. And so the name or the word associated with this card is reserve. And we're going to talk a lot about this concept of reserving, drawing inward, and the medicine of violet. And I'll share with you some stories from my own personal experiences. So violet is a flower that is very, very fascinating. It blooms twice, once in the spring and once in the fall. And not a lot of flowers do this. You know, we do have dandelions, which sort of bloom. They're continuously blooming, but for a lot of flowers that tend to have one seed cycle, violets also have one seed cycle, but they bloom twice. And this is a really interesting idea because they bloom in the spring to procreate, and they bloom in the fall just for fun, just because they can. So they have a second bloom that comes out in the fall that has no reproductive value, as we would see it, but probably tremendous value for the plant itself. And the violet also creates little translucent flowers underground. So it has this wonderful way of containing its beauty. And there's something really beautiful about and you probably have met people like this, people that are very modest in how they project their energy out into the world. And there's something so attractive about modesty. And so violet is, this is sort of the epitome of modesty encapsulated in a flower, are these little shy violets that they're often called. They're very modest. And again, they hold these translucent flowers, these little treasures just for themselves. They keep them tucked in almost into the root base, these little flowers. But if you go in nice and close, you can peek between the leaves and see these little tiny clear flowers tucked away, near the root base and even underground. So I just love that. And I want to read to you a little bit from this book, The Flower Speaks book by Marlene Rudinsky, to share with you some more imagery of the violet. And again, this way that she so beautifully carries her energy. So this is a poem about Violet and the Violet Woman. So I'll just hold up the card so you can maybe look at this while I'm reading. Let's get it in focus here. Who is that woman kneeling silently in the purple flames, her back turned from the chaos of mass mind? What treasures lure her through the eye of the violet into other worlds? You watch her in silence. Your heart is a song caged in a parched throat. Through long, thin bars, the woman hears your soundless song and turns her head. Her eyes are still deep waters where you quench your thirst, drawing strength from the wisdom you see there. So I hope you liked that poem as much as I do. I feel like it just really captures the essence of violet. And I don't know if you heard the crying in the background. My daughter, I'm recording this early in the morning. I've got my baby monitor and she's waking up but went back to sleep. So, and she's such a violet girl. That's her totem flower that both she and I have agreed that is hers, because she is just a little sweet little violet girl. And yeah, is shy often, but has such a strength deep inside. So, let me read you another thing about violet. Lo, I speak to you who stand apart. So this is as if Violet were speaking now to you. I speak to you who stand apart, living your life from a distance. I do not come to you freely. You must seek me out of your own free will. Hidden from most people's eyes am I. But for those who make the effort to look for me, I am the still water wherein one may draw strength. I refresh the souls that are dry from lack of truth and love. My reticence is my gift, for in silence is power. Only he who has quenched his thirst with the waters of my life can truly serve his brother in my violet ray. So again, we see in this writing, I'm hidden from most people's eyes, but for those who make the effort to look for me, I am the still water from which they may draw strength. And so violets they are hard to find, unless you know of a patch that's established. If you go out one day saying, oh, I'm going to look for violet flowers, chances are you're not going to find them. I think they kind of are of the fairy realm a little bit, where they kind of don't want to be seen unless you are really ready to see them and will be gentle with them. So in one story is when we bought our first house in Maryland, we bought it in the summer, and I was looking around to see which plants that we had on the land. And I was so sad because I thought we had violets, but I was like, no, those must be, I thought they were maybe lesser celandine. And I was like, oh man, well, that's okay. But then the next spring, they were all over the entire backyard into the neighbor's lawn, this one continuous field of violets. And then we had patches growing alongside this old oak tree. We even had violets growing inside these little nooks. You know how trees make these little bends and they can gather soil. And I think over years, leaves had been falling in this one crevice and had been composting. And so violets were growing out of that little spot in the crook of a tree. It was such a magical first year to really see all of these violets just sort of taking over. And so, I never had to go anywhere to look for violets. But I remember before that as an herbalist looking for violets and being like, I can never find them. So you kind of have to kind of wish for them, and then they'll find their way to you. The other thing about violets is that you can transplant them. So if you would like to have violets in your yard, you can, if you can find a patch of violets, or you can get violet seeds. I like Strictly Medicinal. They have wonderful, high quality, organic, non-GMO herbal seeds. But you can dig up a little, a few roots from the violet and transplant them. But you want to transplant them where there is an edge. They really like shade and sun. So along the edge of where a forest is growing, or where there's trees, or even in a yard where there's older trees that will cover it and give it partial shade during the day, they really like that. So, and it takes time. They don't spread overnight. It'll take years and years, but you can cultivate a nice bed by just getting them in the ground. Also in this poem, she says, I refresh souls that are dry from lack of truth and love. Reticence is my gift, for in silence is power. And so this is an herb that's often used for the throat and the throat chakra. So literally for the physical throat, it's a really soothing, moistening demulcent, and it soothes the mucosal membranes of the throat. It's emollient, which means it softens hardened tissues. So if you feel like you're walking around with a bit of a peach pit in your throat, or like, you know how before you cry, your throat gets really tight, it can help with loosening that. So if you have stuck or bottled emotions, it can help to soften those so that you can find words to communicate those emotions. And then on a more energetic level, it vibrates, it's a violet color. And so it vibrates with kind of a bluish purple. So that covers, and that is a symbol of its work on the throat chakra, and also maybe on the third eye, and this connection of truth, third eye, and speech, the throat. And it says, my reticence is my gift for silence, for in silence is power. And so one of the things that I've really noticed about violet and my work with violet is this idea of holding things close longer than you think. And so, there's been so many times in my life where I've had these great ideas, and I think I pushed them into existence too quickly. And then they didn't have the root strength to really thrive. And so one of the gifts of violet is this idea of mastering one's speech and mastering one's creative output. And part of this is in holding those thoughts, those ideas, those dreams in and letting them gestate and gestate inside deeply and really waiting for the time where it's almost like you couldn't wait another second. The idea is so complete, it's so full, it's so ready that it just bursts forth from you. And so Violet can help you with that. It can help you hold on to the water of creativity, hold on to those ideas, let them churn inside, let them formulate clarity before they are brought forward. And this is kind of like the image of an oyster creating a pearl. And so at first the pearl is just a grain of sand that's an irritation, but over time the oyster polishes that irritant over and over and over and smooths it out and rounds it out until it becomes this beautiful pearl. And so we can think about, if we're looking for clarity of our own spiritual path and maybe our own dharma or our own work in the world, what are the things that maybe irritate you? Or as Sean Corn, a famous yoga teacher, once said, she said, if you're looking for, if you want to find what you're offering, look to your own deepest wound. If you want to find your own deepest offering, look to your own deepest wound. So whatever it is that you chew on day after day after day, whether it's a wound or maybe it's a gift, it could also just be an idea, but to really look at that over and over and over and really let it build itself into creation. That is such a powerful thing, because if you take the pearl out too soon, it just looks like a polished piece of sand, which isn't, it doesn't have that same magic and brilliance as a fully formed pearl. So that is one of the gifts of Violet. And there's a quote from Proverbs 17, 27 and 28 that I wanted to read to you. That's a really wonderful example of this as well. So I'm going to pull this up. The wise say very little, and those with understanding stay calm. Even fools seem to be wise if they keep quiet. If they don't speak, they appear to understand. So, again, the wise remain silent and they remain undisturbed and calm. And so Violet is cool, it's relaxing, it's moistening. And it has this sort of gently kind of, it slows down that excitation, that, puppy energy that we sometimes get, especially in the springtime. So if you're looking to cultivate more silence and more calm and more quiet, you can use Violet medicine, especially right now during these late winter weeks and months. I'm recording this in mid-January. So, this would be a good time to start, or you could start it in spring too. But just to sort of help you hold and contain all of that vital imaginative energy until it's time for it to actually take root and take form. There is a Violet, for those of you who are wondering, well, where do I get Violet? Well, you can make your own tincture, which is actually quite easy. And you can gather fresh leaves and flowers in the spring or in the fall and make a tincture out of them by I like to use brandy. That's my favorite. So you would and I don't chop them. I chop the leaves, but not the flowers. To me, it just doesn't feel right to chop up these beautiful flowers. So, and they are thin enough to where the energy will absorb into the tincture. So what you can do is just put them into a jar, stuff it all the way down, fill it with brandy, let it sit for about a full month, and then strain it out. But you do want to pack the herbs down and try to only have maybe about an inch of space at the top of the jar. So you might want a smaller jar rather than a larger one, so that you can make sure you only have that little bit at the top. That'll prevent it from molding. And then after a month, you can strain it and then put it in a dropper bottle and take it. If you don't have time, energy, or interest in doing that, this is a great Violet tincture from Red Moon Herbs. So you can see it there. Pardon my nails. So Red Moon Herbs, they make a wonderful violet tincture. They're based out of North Carolina, Black Mountain, and the Asheville region, which is my old stomping grounds. And so you can just take. I like to take a dropper full, or you could take 10 drops to a dropper full, just directly on the tongue. And it's very gentle and mild and has this very sweet dispersive energy to it. And what was I going? Oh, I was going to tell you a story. So I did this shamanic energy healing session a few weeks ago, and she was working on a bunch of different things, but it was all coming up through my throat. And as I was laying there, I could feel the energy really consolidating in my throat, and it was just sort of like a big ball. And I was like, what do I do? And then all of a sudden I was like, violet. So I pulled out my violet tincture. I started taking just 3 drops, maybe every hour or so. And slowly I could feel that blockage in my throat dissolving. And then that gave way to a whole bunch of interesting and new ideas. It also gave way from some physical things that were going on in my body that just cleared. So it was really, really interesting. And one of my friends who's an amazing herbalist and writer, Amanda Dilday, you can check out her podcast. I think it's called The Plant Whisperer. But she writes in her book, Flowers for a Girl, that when she started taking violet, it started helping her process some trauma from her childhood. And it helped her to find her voice, to speak up, and to actually put words to these images that had been repressed for a long time. And I feel like violet does work on repressed memories as well, or repressed gifts as too. So violet can be a really good one to help bring up from the waters creative gifts, traumas on like the negative side, but gifts on the good side. So it can really help bring those waters into a more active state, so that things can be brought to the surface. But then again, remember that the gift of violet is to hold on to them before you speak them. Give them time to really work themselves out before you give them away. And this is something that I recently posted on Instagram, a little snapshot, a little writing about violet. So you can check that out too, where I offer some insights and gifts for how we can vision violet medicine. One of the things that I did say is because it blooms both in the spring and in the fall, it's kind of like, to me, it also reminds me of the fertility and that creative vibrance that comes through, first maybe in our earlier years, as maybe mothers or creative entrepreneurs, but then we bloom again in the fall or the autumn of our lives. We bloom again in the later years. So we have an opportunity to have a second blossoming. And violet can again kind of urge us to take that on, to say, it maybe for those in their younger years, okay, what is the gift that's being birthed forth? And then in the later years, what is your second blossom? What does that look like? What is your second gift in that second part of life? So that's another way that we can think about this amazing medicine. So that's what I have for you today. I'd love to hear your ideas. And if you've used violet medicine, what your favorite meditations might be with violet, favorite places to go to find violet. I found it pretty much across the whole Northeast. You can find it, most places along the Northeast. So I'd love to hear from you. Thanks all for watching, and take care.